The first time Dominic Hayes saw me, I was giving away the only meal I had left. Rain pressed against the windows of Bella Vita like thousands of impatient fingers, turning the city lights outside into long, bleeding streaks of gold and red. Inside, everything looked expensive enough to make a person like me feel temporary. White tablecloths, crystal glasses, men in tailored suits who never looked at the waitresses unless they wanted something. Women with diamond bracelets resting beside untouched plates of food. I had been working since 6 that morning. By midnight, my feet ached so badly I could feel every heartbeat in my heels. My uniform smelled faintly of coffee, garlic butter, and rain from when I had stepped outside to throw away boxes behind the kitchen. In my locker, my phone had 3 missed calls from my landlord and 1 message I still could not bring myself to open. Rent was late again. I had exactly $13 in my purse, a bus card with 1 ride left, and a staff meal wrapped in foil under the counter. Chicken, bread, and mashed potatoes that I had been saving all night. It was supposed to be my dinner. Maybe breakfast too, if I stretched it. Then I saw her. A little girl stood outside the front window, soaked to the skin, her small hands pressed against the glass. She could not have been more than 7. Her hair clung to her cheeks. Her lips were pale. She was staring, not at the rich people, not at the chandeliers, not at the polished silverware. She was staring at the breadbasket on table 12. For a moment, I told myself not to get involved. That was what people like me learned early. Keep your head down. Do your job. Do not make trouble for yourself when you are already 1 bad day away from losing everything. But then the girl swallowed hard, like hunger had become something sharp in her throat. So I took my staff meal from under the counter, slipped through the side door, and stepped into the rain. "Hey," I said gently. She flinched like she expected me to yell. I hated that. I hated how familiar that fear looked. I crouched in front of her and held out the foil container. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." Her eyes moved from the food to my face. "Is it free?" The question cracked something inside me. "Yes," I whispered. "It's free." She took the container with both hands, but she did not eat right away. She looked behind her first, down the dark street, as if someone might come out of the rain and snatch it away. "What's your name?" I asked. "Lily," she said. Before I could ask anything else, the side door slammed open behind me. "Emily," my manager barked. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I stood, rain running down my face, my empty hands suddenly feeling like evidence. Inside the restaurant, every warm light, every wealthy guest, every polished window seemed to turn toward me. And in the farthest VIP booth, half hidden in shadow, a man in a black suit lowered his glass and looked directly at me. I did not know his name yet. I only knew that when his cold gray eyes found mine, the entire restaurant seemed to go silent. The man in the black suit did not look like someone who belonged in my world. He sat in the farthest VIP booth, where the light barely touched him, surrounded by men who looked too still to be ordinary guests. One stood near the private hallway with his hands folded in front of him. Another watched the entrance instead of his food. A third kept his eyes on the street outside, where rain washed over the black cars lined against the curb. I had served enough rich men to know the difference between money and power. Money was loud. It laughed too hard, ordered too much, and wanted everyone to notice it. Power was quiet. Power did not ask for attention. It entered a room and made attention kneel. That was what he felt like. Cold, controlled, dangerous without moving a finger. My manager, Mr. Grayson, grabbed my arm harder than necessary and pulled me away from the side door. "Do you understand what you just did?" he hissed, forcing a smile for the customers while his fingers dug into my sleeve. "You gave restaurant property to some street kid in front of a window full of paying guests." "It was my staff meal," I said. His face tightened. "That is not the point. It was food that would have gone to me. And now it has gone outside, where every customer in this room can see you turning Bella Vita into a charity kitchen." My cheeks burned, but not from shame. From anger. From exhaustion. From the way he said charity like kindness was something dirty. Behind him, through the glass wall dividing the dining room from the kitchen corridor, I could still see Lily standing under the awning with the foil container pressed against her chest. She had not run. She was watching me with wide, frightened eyes, as if my punishment might somehow be her fault. That made my voice steadier. "She was hungry," I said. Mr. Grayson laughed under his breath. "And you are what, Emily? Her savior?" "No," I said. "Just someone who noticed." The words left my mouth before I could stop them. For 1 second, the kitchen hallway went still. Then Mr. Grayson's expression changed. Not louder. Worse. Colder. The kind of cold that came from a small man realizing a woman he thought he could crush had not bowed low enough. "You forget your place," he said. I looked at his hand still wrapped around my arm. "No. I remember it every day." His grip tightened. Before he could say anything else, a shadow shifted near the end of the hallway. One of the men from the VIP booth stood there. Tall, broad, silent. Mr. Grayson released me so quickly my arm stung. The man did not speak to me. He did not comfort me. He did not even look kind. He simply looked at Mr. Grayson with an expression so empty it made the air feel thinner. "Mr. Hayes would like the waitress returned to the floor," he said. Mr. Grayson swallowed. "Of course. We were just handling a staff issue." The man's eyes dropped briefly to the red marks on my sleeve. "Handle it carefully." Then he turned and walked away. "Mr. Hayes." The name moved through the kitchen like a warning no one wanted to say out loud. When I stepped back into the dining room, the man in the black suit was still seated in shadow. A contract lay open on the table in front of him. Across from him, two older men were talking in low, nervous voices, but he was not listening anymore. His eyes were on me. Not soft, not warm, not safe. He looked at me the way a man studies a locked door and decides whether to break it open or buy the whole building around it. I tried to look away first. I failed. For the first time that night, I understood something worse than being invisible. Being seen by the wrong man could be far more dangerous. And Dominic Hayes had just stopped caring about the deal in front of him because of me. Mr. Grayson waited until the dining room was full before he decided to make an example out of me. That was the kind of man he was. He never raised his voice in private when he could humiliate someone in public. He liked witnesses. He liked the small, polished cruelty of making people smile while they watched someone else bleed from the inside. I was carrying 2 plates of truffle pasta to table 9 when he stepped into my path. "Emily," he said loudly enough for the nearest tables to hear. A moment. Every instinct in my body told me to keep walking. But his smile warned me not to. The restaurant had returned to its expensive rhythm after the little scene in the hallway. Forks tapped porcelain. Wine poured into crystal. Laughter rose and fell beneath the rain tapping against the tall windows. Outside, Lily was gone. I had watched her disappear down the block with the foil container under her coat, and the only thing keeping me steady was knowing she had eaten. Mr. Grayson took the plates from my hands and handed them to another server. Then he turned me toward the center of the room. My stomach dropped. "I would like to apologize to our guests," he announced, his voice smooth and practiced, "for the unprofessional display that occurred near the front window earlier tonight." The conversation slowed. A woman in pearls looked up from her wine. A man at the bar turned on his stool. Someone at table 4 whispered, and someone else laughed quietly. I felt heat crawl up my throat. Mr. Grayson placed one hand on my shoulder, not gently. Emily here allowed her personal emotions to interfere with the standards of this establishment. My hands curled at my sides. The word personal hit harder than it should have. As if hunger was personal. As if a child shivering in the rain was my weakness and not the world's shame. "She understands now," he continued, squeezing my shoulder, "that Bella Vita is not a shelter, not a soup kitchen, and certainly not a place where staff may hand food through windows like street vendors." A few guests chuckled. I looked down at the polished floor because if I looked at anyone's face, I might break. Then a man at table 12 leaned back in his chair and tossed a folded $100 bill onto the floor in front of me. "There," he said with a lazy grin. "Buy your little charity case something tomorrow. Maybe keep the performance outside next time." The bill landed near my shoe. For one silent second, all I could hear was the rain. Mr. Grayson's smile widened. "Go on, Emily. Pick it up." I stared at the money. $13 in my purse. 1 bus ride left. Rent overdue. A landlord who had stopped pretending to be patient. I needed that money. God, I needed it. But I thought of Lily asking, "Is it free?" I thought of her small hands holding the food like it might vanish. And then I bent down. The man laughed before I even touched the bill. I picked it up, smoothed it between my fingers, and placed it back on his table beside his untouched steak. "No, thank you," I said. His grin faded. Mr. Grayson's hand slid off my shoulder. I should have stopped there. A smarter woman would have stopped there. A woman with rent money, family, savings, somewhere safe to go would have swallowed the rest. but I had been invisible for so long that maybe I had forgotten how to be afraid properly. If feeding a hungry child makes me unprofessional, I said, my voice trembling but clear, then maybe this place should be ashamed of its standards, not me. The room went still. Not quiet. Still. Like every breath had been locked behind expensive teeth. Mr. Grayson's face turned pale with rage. "You are finished," he whispered. "Do you hear me? Finished." I looked at him, and for the first time that night, I did not lower my eyes. "Then I'll leave with my dignity." A chair moved in the farthest VIP booth. The sound was small, but it cut through the room like a command. Dominic Hayes stood. No one spoke. No one laughed. Even Mr. Grayson seemed to forget how to breathe. Dominic buttoned his black suit jacket with calm, deliberate fingers and looked first at the man who had thrown the money, then at my manager, then finally at me. His eyes were colder than the rain outside, but they were not empty anymore. He walked toward us slowly, each step measured, powerful, terrifyingly quiet. The men at his booth rose behind him like shadows obeying the dark. When he stopped beside me, he did not touch me. He did not comfort me. He simply looked at Mr. Grayson and said, "Who gave you permission to humiliate her?" Mr. Grayson opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Dominic's gaze shifted to the $100 bill on the table. Then he smiled. It was not kind. It was the kind of smile that made powerful men regret being noticed. "Keep your money," he said softly. "By morning, she won't need yours." And that was when I realized Dominic Hayes was not angry because someone had broken restaurant rules. He was angry because someone had made me feel small in front of him. By morning, the restaurant no longer belonged to the people who had humiliated me. I found out from the news. Not from Mr. Grayson. Not from Human Resources. Not from the group chat where the servers usually complained about stolen tips and broken espresso machines. I found out while standing in the tiny kitchen of my apartment, still wearing yesterday's damp uniform, watching the cracked screen of my phone as a business headline flashed across it. Hayes Holdings acquires Bella Vita Restaurant Group in overnight deal. For a few seconds, I just stared. My coffee went cold in my hand. The article said the purchase was sudden, aggressive, and far above market value. Analysts called it strategically unusual. One man on the Financial Channel laughed and said no one bought a failing luxury restaurant chain at 3 a.m. unless they were hiding something. I knew better. Dominic Hayes had not been hiding something. He had been answering something. My stomach twisted as his face appeared on the screen, caught by cameras outside a black car beneath flashing city lights. He wore a dark coat over a black suit, his expression unreadable, his eyes hidden behind the shadow of the open car door. Reporters shouted questions at him. "Mr. Hayes, why Bella Vita? Was this acquisition planned? Is this connected to your private meeting last night?" Dominic did not answer any of them. He only stepped into the car, calm as a storm that had already chosen where to strike. I should not have gone back. Every reasonable part of me knew that. I had been fired. Publicly. Humiliated. I had no reason to step through those glass doors again except to collect my last paycheck and whatever dignity I could scrape off the floor. But pride is strange when you have very little left. So I put on my cleanest blouse, tied my hair back, and took the bus across town with $13 still in my purse and 100 questions pressing against my ribs. Bella Vita looked different in daylight. Less magical. Less untouchable. The rain had stopped, but the pavement still shone beneath the gray morning sky. 2 black SUVs were parked outside the entrance. Men in dark suits stood near the curb, not blocking the door, just making it very clear that no one entered without being noticed. Inside, the staff stood gathered near the bar, whispering nervously. Mr. Grayson was there too. For the first time since I had known him, he did not look polished. His tie was crooked. His face was pale. His phone trembled slightly in his hand. When he saw me, his eyes sharpened with old cruelty. "You shouldn't be here," he said. Before I could answer, the entire room fell silent. Dominic Hayes walked down the staircase from the private dining level. He moved like he owned the air before he owned the building. Dark suit, white shirt, expensive watch catching the light for one cold second. Behind him came 2 lawyers, a woman with a tablet, and the same silent man who had seen the mark on my arm last night. Dominic did not look at anyone first. He looked at me. That was the worst part. Not the money. Not the black cars. Not the fact that every person in the room suddenly seemed afraid to breathe. It was the way his eyes found me immediately, like he had known exactly where I would stand. Mr. Grayson rushed forward. Mr. Hayes, I can explain last night's incident. Dominic stopped beside the hostess stand. You can, he said. 2 words. Quiet. Deadly. Mr. Grayson swallowed. The waitress violated company policy. She gave food away in front of guests, then insulted the standards of the establishment. I was protecting the brand. Dominic's face did not change. The brand, he repeated. Yes. Dominic turned to the woman with the tablet. Read the new ownership directive. She stepped forward. Effective immediately, Bella Vita Restaurant Group will terminate any employee found abusing, humiliating, threatening, or exploiting staff under the excuse of brand protection. Mr. Grayson's mouth opened. The woman continued. Mr. Grayson, your employment is terminated. Security will escort you out. The room froze. His face drained completely. You can't be serious. Dominic finally looked at him fully. I bought the company, he said. I rarely joke with things I own. Mr. Grayson turned toward me, panic twisting into hatred. This is because of her. Dominic's gaze did not leave him. No, he said. This is because of you. Then his eyes shifted to me, and something in the room tightened. She is not an employee to be pitted, Dominic said, voice low enough that everyone leaned in to hear it. She is the reason this place still has a name worth saving. My breath caught. I wanted to feel relieved. I wanted to feel safe. But there was nothing safe about the way Dominic Hayes defended someone. It did not feel like kindness. It felt like a warning carved into marble. Mr. Grayson was escorted out past me, his shoulder brushing mine. For once, he did not dare speak. Dominic stepped closer. Not too close. Just close enough that I could smell rain on his coat and expensive cologne beneath it. You didn't have to do this, I whispered. His eyes lowered to mine. No, he said. I didn't. That answer should have made things clearer. It made everything worse. Because when Dominic Hayes walked away, leaving every eye in the restaurant fixed on me, I noticed something folded carefully in his hand. A stained white napkin. The same one I had used last night to wrap Lily's bread. The first change came before my shift even started. I was standing in the employee locker room, staring at the new schedule taped to the wall, when I realized my name had been moved from closing shift to early dinner service. No more leaving after midnight. No more walking 3 blocks alone to the bus stop, while drunk men from the bar district watched me from doorways. Beside my name was a new note written in clean black ink. Emily Parker, escorted transportation after shift. I stared at it until the letters blurred. Then came the second change. My paycheck had been adjusted. Not a little. Not politely. Enough that I had to sit on the wooden bench between lockers because my knees suddenly felt weak. My hourly wage had doubled. Back pay had been added for every unpaid overtime hour Mr. Grayson had erased from my time card. There was even a line labeled Employee Hardship Compensation. Hardship. The word made my throat tighten. Because rich people always had elegant names for the things poor people simply survived. By noon, every server knew. They whispered when I walked past. Some looked relieved. Some looked jealous. A few looked at me like I had done something shameful by being protected by a man none of us understood. By 6, I found out the lock on my apartment door had been replaced. I had not asked for that either. My landlord called, suddenly polite, saying a security company had come with authorization from the building owner. That was funny, because yesterday he had threatened to throw my belongings onto the sidewalk. Today he called me Miss Parker and asked if I needed anything else repaired. I stood in the staff hallway with my phone pressed to my ear, watching rainwater slide down the narrow window at the end of the corridor. That was when I saw the black car. It was parked across the street from the restaurant, half hidden beneath the shadow of a street lamp. The engine was running. The windows were tinted. A man in a dark coat stood beside it, not looking at me directly, but somehow watching everything. My pulse kicked hard. Protection did not feel soft when it came from Dominic Hayes. It felt like invisible walls being built around my life without my permission. After my shift, I refused the town car waiting at the curb and walked straight toward the black sedan parked under the ring. The driver stepped forward. Miss Parker, I want to speak to him. The man hesitated. Then the rear window lowered. Dominic Hayes sat inside, one arm resting against the leather seat, his face cut by the dim glow of the dashboard. He looked untouched by the rain, untouched by guilt, untouched by the fact that he had reached into my life and rearranged it while I was still trying to understand why. Get in, he said. No, his eyes lifted to mine. The driver went very still. I folded my arms. even though my blouse was getting soaked. You changed my schedule. You changed my pay. You changed my lock. You put a car outside my apartment and a man outside my job. Dominic looked at me for a long moment. Yes. The calmness of it made my anger sharpen. You don't get to do that. I already did. I am not something you own. That finally changed him. Not much. Only a flicker in his eyes. A shadow passing behind glass. No, he said softly. You are not. Then stop acting like it. Rain slid down my cheeks. I hated that I probably looked fragile. I hated more that his gaze dropped to my wet hair, my trembling hands, my thin shoes standing in a puddle, and something dark moved through his expression. Not pity. Worse. Restraint. You think this is about ownership? He asked. What else would it be? He leaned forward slightly, and the whole world seemed to narrow to the space between us. The city noise faded. The restaurant lights blurred behind me. Even the rain sounded quieter. This city eats girls like you, he said. It smiles first. Then it takes pieces. A late shift. A bad lock. A man who grabs your arm and calls it policy. A landlord who waits until you have nowhere to go. My breath caught. He knew too much. Dominic's voice stayed cold, but something beneath it was not calm at all. I am not trying to own you, Emily. I am making sure the world understands you are no longer easy to touch. For one dangerous second, I had no answer, because a part of me wanted to hate him, and another part, smaller and more frightening, wanted to believe him. I stepped back from the car. You don't get to decide what keeps me safe. His jaw tightened. No, he said, but I can decide what happens to anyone who threatens you. The words should have scared me. They did. But as I turned to walk away, I saw his hand resting on the seat beside him. And it was the same stained napkin from the night before, folded carefully like something valuable. I stopped under the street lamp and looked back at him through the rain. Why? I whispered. Why are you looking at me like I'm the only thing in this city you're afraid to lose? Dominic did not answer. But for the first time, his silence looked like a confession. I found Lily again behind the restaurant 3 nights later. At first, I thought she was only a shadow. The alley behind Bella Vita was narrow and wet, filled with the smell of rainwater, cigarette smoke, and garlic from the kitchen vents. The city hummed beyond the brick walls, all headlights and sirens, and people pretending not to notice one another. I had stayed late to help the new manager organize the staff files, mostly because I hated how grateful everyone expected me to be. Protected. That was what they whispered now, as if protection did not come with bars if the wrong man built the cage. I stepped outside with a bag of leftover bread in my hand, hoping Lily might come back. I had told myself it was stupid. Children like her disappeared in cities like this. One kind meal did not create a miracle. Then I heard the soft scrape of a shoe against concrete. She was crouched behind the dumpster, smaller than I remembered, her coat wrapped tightly around her thin body. Her face was pale beneath the yellow alley light. When she saw me, she pressed her back against the wall like a cornered animal. Lily, I whispered. Her eyes filled with tears immediately. I didn't know where else to go. Something cold moved through me. I knelt slowly, keeping my hands where she could see them. Are you hurt? She shook her head too fast. That meant yes. I saw it then. A bruise near her wrist, dark against her small skin, half hidden beneath her sleeve. The bread bag slipped lower in my hand. Who did that to you? Lily looked past me toward the mouth of the alley. They said I have to give it back. Give what back? Her little fingers trembled as she reached into her coat and pulled out a bracelet. It was not expensive, not the kind of jewelry women wore inside Bella Vita. It was thin silver, scratched at the clasp, with a tiny blue charm shaped like an eye. But when I took it from her, I noticed something strange etched into the inside. Not a name. Numbers. Coordinates. Before I could ask what they meant, the alley went silent in a way I had learned to fear. The kitchen door opened behind me. Dominic Hayes stepped out. No umbrella. No hurry. Just a black coat, cold eyes, and a stillness that made the rain seem afraid to touch him. 2 of his men remained by the door, but Dominic came forward alone. His gaze moved from my face to Lily, then to the bracelet in my palm. For the first time since I had met him, I saw something break through his control. Recognition. Then fury. He said one word, low and sharp. Where did you get that? Lily started crying. I stood immediately, putting myself between them before I could think better of it. Do not scare her. One of Dominic's men shifted like I had just stepped in front of a loaded gun. Dominic stopped walking. His eyes lifted to mine, colder than winter glass. Emily, move. No. The word left me before fear could catch it. His jaw tightened. You have no idea what you're holding. Then explain it. He looked at Lily again, and something dark passed over his face. Not anger at her. Not exactly. Something older. More dangerous. That bracelet belonged to a woman named Claire Monroe, he said. Lily whispered, my mom. My stomach dropped. Dominic's voice lowered. Claire worked for someone who betrayed me. Before she disappeared, she stole information that could start a war in this city. I looked down at the bracelet in my hand. The tiny blue charm suddenly felt heavier than gold. Lily reached for my sleeve. Mom said if bad men came, I should find the lady who fed me. The rain seemed to stop in my lungs. Me. Her mother had sent her to me. Not because I was strong. Not because I knew how to survive men like Dominic Hayes. But because one night, when I had almost nothing, I had given her child the only meal I had. Dominic stared at the little girl's hand clutching my sleeve. Then he looked at me. You did not just feed a hungry child, he said quietly. You became the only person she trusts. A sound echoed at the end of the alley. A car door closing. Dominic's head turned slightly. His men moved at once. Lily whimpered and pressed against my side. Dominic stepped closer, his voice cutting through the rain like a blade. From this moment on, Emily, you are not involved by accident anymore. I swallowed. What does that mean? His eyes met mine. It means the men hunting her will come for you first. Dominic did not take me home that night. He took me somewhere above the city, to the top floor of a glass tower where the windows looked down on the rain-soaked streets like the world was something distant and breakable. His private office was all dark wood, steel, quiet lights, and locked doors. Men spoke in low voices outside. Phones rang once and were answered immediately. Every movement felt controlled. Except mine. I stood near the window with Lily asleep on the leather couch behind me, wrapped in Dominic's black coat. She looked even smaller there, swallowed by expensive silence. You can't keep us here, I said. Dominic stood behind his desk, sleeves rolled to his forearms, reading something on a tablet. He had not raised his voice once since the alley. Somehow that made him more terrifying. I can't until I know who followed you. You mean until you decide I'm allowed to breathe again? His eyes lifted. Cold. Patient. Dangerous. I mean until the men looking for that bracelet understand that touching you will cost more than they can pay. My heart hit once hard. That was the problem with Dominic Hayes. He said terrifying things in a voice that almost sounded like protection. Before I could answer, the office door opened. A younger man stepped inside carrying a leather briefcase. He was tall, clean-cut, with brown hair still damp from the rain and a face too open to belong in Dominic's world. His suit was expensive, but not in the same predatory way. He looked like courtrooms, not back rooms. Mr. Hayes, he said. I came as soon as I got the call. Dominic's expression cooled by several degrees. Ethan Vale, he said. Corporate attorney. Civil protection cases. He'll arrange legal guardianship options for the child and a safe statement for you. Ethan looked at me, and unlike everyone else in that office, he smiled gently. You're Emily? I nodded. I'm sorry you were dragged into this. His voice was warm. Human. I'll make sure you understand every document before you sign anything. No one should make decisions for you. The room changed. Not loudly, but I felt it. Dominic went still behind the desk. Ethan took one step toward me and offered his card. You can call me directly, day or night. I reached for it. Dominic's voice cut through the space before my fingers touched the paper. She won't need your personal number. Ethan paused. So did I. Slowly, I turned toward Dominic. Excuse me. His face gave nothing away. All communication goes through my office. No, I said. It doesn't. For a moment, no one moved. Outside the office glass, one of Dominic's men looked away too quickly. Ethan lowered his hand, uncomfortable. Mr. Hayes, with respect, Miss Parker is a witness, not an asset. Dominic's eyes shifted to him. The silence that followed was so sharp it made my skin prickle. Choose your next word carefully, Dominic said. Ethan swallowed, but he did not back down. That surprised me. Maybe it surprised Dominic too. I'm saying she needs independent counsel. Someone not connected to your organization. Dominic came around the desk slowly. Every step made the room feel smaller. He stopped beside me, not touching, but close enough that I could feel the heat of him through the cold air. His gaze stayed on Ethan, but his words were for me. You want to leave with him? My breath caught. There it was. Not anger. Not exactly. Jealousy, buried beneath control, so tight it looked like ice. I want a choice, I said. His jaw flexed. You have one. Do I? His eyes finally dropped to mine. For 1 second, I saw something behind the coldness. Something dark and restless. Something that looked almost like fear, except men like Dominic Hayes did not admit fear. They turned it into rules, guards, locked doors, and black cars waiting in the rain. He reached into the inside pocket of his coat and placed a file on the desk. Inside were photographs. My apartment door, scratched near the lock. A dark sedan outside Bella Vita. A man standing across from my bus stop 2 nights before I ever found Lily again. My name written on a piece of paper beside Claire Monroe's bracelet. My fingers went numb. They were watching you before you knew Lily mattered, Dominic said quietly. Before I bought the restaurant. Before I put men outside your building. Ethan's face went pale. I looked at Dominic. Why didn't you tell me? Because you already think my protection is a cage. And this is supposed to make me trust you? No, he said. It is supposed to keep you alive long enough to decide whether you hate me. The words hit harder than they should have. I wanted to look away. I couldn't. Ethan cleared his throat softly. Emily, I can still help you leave tonight if that's what you want. Dominic did not move, but the entire room seemed to hold its breath. He looked at me with that same cold, impossible restraint. I can stay away from you, he said, so low only I could hear it. But I cannot stop checking whether you are safe. Before I could answer, Lily stirred on the couch and whispered one word in her sleep. Mom. Then the tablet on Dominic's desk lit up with a security alert. A live camera feed filled the screen. Someone had just broken into my apartment. The security feed showed my apartment door standing open. For 1 second, no one moved. The camera angle was grainy, washed in blue from the hallway light, but I knew every inch of that narrow landing. The peeling paint beside my door. The crooked welcome mat I had bought from a discount store. The little crack in the wall where cold air came through during winter. A man in a dark jacket stepped out of my apartment carrying something in his hand. Not jewelry. Not money. My old employee folder. My stomach turned cold. Dominic was already moving. His men reached for phones. Ethan started speaking, asking about police, warrants, evidence, but the room blurred around me as I stared at the screen. The man paused near the stairwell and looked directly into the camera. Then he lifted a small object between 2 fingers. A blue charm. Lily's bracelet. Except the bracelet was still in Dominic's office, which meant there was another one. Freeze it, I whispered. Dominic looked at me. Emily, freeze the video. One of his men obeyed. The image stopped on the man's hand. The charm looked identical to Lily's, but the chain attached to it was different. Thicker. Newer. Not a child's bracelet. I stepped closer to the screen, my heartbeat beating too loudly in my ears. That isn't Lily's. Dominic's eyes narrowed. I turned toward him. Claire Monroe didn't hide the coordinates in one bracelet. She made copies. The office went silent. Ethan breathed out slowly. Copies for whom? I looked at the frozen image again. At the man's sleeve. At the faint white logo stitched near his wrist. Bella Vita Catering. My blood went still. That jacket, I said. It's from the old catering uniforms. Before the restaurant rebranded. Dominic's face changed. Only slightly. But everyone in the room felt it. Where are the old uniforms stored? He asked. I knew before anyone answered. Because Mr. Grayson used to send me there when he wanted me out of sight. The closed kitchen on Mercer Street, I said. Bella Vita used it for private events before the lease ended. Dominic turned to his men. Get cars ready. But I was already reaching for Lily, gently waking her from the couch. Dominic caught my wrist before I reached the door. Absolutely not. I looked down at his hand around mine. Warm, firm, controlled. Then I looked up at him. She came to me. She is not your responsibility. No, I said. She is a child. That is enough. His jaw tightened. You are not walking into a trap because you feel guilty. I'm walking in because I know that kitchen. You don't. For a moment, the room seemed to shrink around us. His eyes were furious. Mine were afraid. But I did not pull back. Finally, Dominic released my wrist like it cost him something. The Mercer Street kitchen sat beneath an abandoned event hall, hidden behind a rusted delivery gate and a row of dumpsters slick with rain. The city above was all neon signs and passing headlights, but down there everything smelled like old oil, dust, and secrets. Dominic's men moved through the shadows first. I stayed behind him, Lily held against my side, but my eyes kept searching. Storage racks, broken ovens, crates of old table linens. Then I saw it. A smear of red sauce on a white napkin. Not fresh, not accidental. Folded the same way I had folded Lily's bread that first night. I picked it up with trembling fingers. There were numbers written inside. Not coordinates this time. A room number. Dominic looked at it once. Hotel. The private Hotel Bella Vita used for celebrity catering, I whispered. Room 904. His eyes cut to one of his men. Who booked that room? The man checked his phone, then went pale. No one spoke. Dominic's voice dropped. Say it. The man swallowed. It was booked under Ethan Vale. I turned so fast the room tilted. Ethan stood near the doorway, no longer gentle, no longer warm. In his hand was a phone. On the screen, a message had already been sent. She found it. Lily whimpered. Dominic stepped in front of us, his body becoming a wall. Ethan smiled sadly at me. You really should have let him keep you in the cage, Emily. Dominic's hand closed around mine behind his back, not to restrain me this time, to make sure I was still there. And in that dark, forgotten kitchen, I finally understood the truth. Dominic had not been protecting me from the wrong man. He had been the only man standing between me and everyone else. Dominic moved before Ethan could raise the phone again. It was not loud. That was what made it terrifying. No shouting, no chaos. Just one sharp motion of Dominic's hand, and every man in the dark kitchen obeyed like the room itself belonged to him. The lights cut out. Lily gasped against my side. Rain hammered the metal delivery door behind us, and for one breathless second, all I could see was the blue glow of Ethan's phone reflected in his suddenly frightened eyes. You should not have used her name, Dominic said. Ethan tried to smile. You don't scare me, Hayes. Dominic stepped forward. The smile died. You were not supposed to be scared of me, Dominic said quietly. You were supposed to be smart enough not to touch what I protect. The next moments happened too fast and too slowly at the same time. One of Dominic's men took Ethan's phone. Another blocked the only exit. Ethan shouted something about deals, evidence, and men more powerful than Dominic waiting at the hotel. But his voice cracked when Dominic placed Claire Monroe's bracelet on the steel counter between them. The tiny blue charm swung once, then stopped. You thought Claire hid one secret, Dominic said. She hid a map. Ethan went pale. I looked at the napkin in my hand. Room 904. The second charm. The old catering jacket. All of it had been meant to pull us toward the hotel, but Ethan had made one mistake. He thought I was only the girl Dominic wanted to protect. He forgot I had spent years being invisible in places rich men never bothered to notice. The room number is not the meeting place, I whispered. Dominic turned to me. I pointed toward the old event freezer at the back of the kitchen. Bella Vita used to label private catering routes by hotel room. Room 904 means service elevator 9, floor 4. There's a delivery tunnel under the hotel. For the first time that night, Dominic did not look at me like I was fragile. He looked at me like I was necessary. Within 20 minutes, we were beneath the hotel, moving through a concrete corridor that smelled of bleach and rain-soaked dust. Lily was safe in the car with Dominic's most trusted guard, but I still felt her small fingers clinging to my sleeve. I still heard her whispering Mom in her sleep. At the end of the tunnel, men waited with briefcases, passports, and Claire Monroe's stolen files. Dominic's people surrounded them before they understood the trap had turned. No gunfire, no blood, just doors locking, phones dying. Powerful men realizing their secrets had been taken from them by the same woman they had underestimated. By dawn, Ethan was gone in handcuffs arranged by the only federal contact Dominic trusted. Claire's files were secured. Lily was placed under temporary protection with people who owed Dominic too much to betray him. And I stood outside Bella Vita, soaked in the same kind of rain that had started everything. Dominic stood a few feet away from me. For once, there were no guards close enough to hear. You should let me go, I said. His face did not change, but something in his eyes did. Something tightened. Something broke quietly where no one else could see. Is that what you want? I looked at the restaurant windows. At the place where I had once been just a tired waitress with $13 and one meal left. At the door where Lily had stood hungry. At the street where Dominic Hayes had first looked at me like I was not invisible. No, I whispered. But people get hurt when you care about them. Dominic reached inside his coat. Not for a phone. Not for a weapon. Not for power. For a folded white napkin. My breath caught. It was stained faintly with sauce, soft at the corners from being carried too long. The same napkin I had used to wrap Lily's bread the night I thought no one was watching. I bought the restaurant chain because of this, he said. My fingers trembled as he placed it in my hand. Because of a napkin? Because you had nothing, he said, and still gave something away. The rain blurred his face, but not his eyes. They were still cold, still dangerous, but no longer empty. I have spent my whole life making people fear what I can take from them, he said. Then you walked into the rain and gave away the last thing you had. My throat tightened. Dominic stepped closer, slow enough that I could stop him if I wanted to. I do not know how to love gently, Emily, he said. I only know how to stand between you and anything that tries to break you. You can't buy every place that hurts me. No, he said, but I can make sure you never stand alone in one again. I looked down at the napkin in my hand. For so long, I had thought being seen meant being judged, used, or punished. But Dominic had seen the part of me the world ignored. The part that stayed kind even when kindness cost too much. When I looked up, his control was still there. But beneath it was the truth. The most dangerous man in the city was waiting for a waitress to decide if he was worth saving too. I stepped closer, not because I was no longer afraid. Because for the first time, I understood that fear and safety could stand in the same rain, wearing the same black suit. Dominic lowered his forehead to mine, barely touching, like even now he was asking without words. Behind us, Bella Vita's sign flickered on in the dawn, and in my hand, the stained napkin felt less like proof of the night he found me, and more like the beginning of the life he was willing to burn the whole city to protect. 3 days after Dominic Hayes burned half the city's secrets into silence, Bella Vita reopened. Not with chandeliers polished for wealthy guests. Not with critics invited to taste expensive sauces. Not with cameras or press waiting outside. It reopened at noon, while rain still clung to the windows, with a line of hungry children standing beneath the awning where Lily had once pressed her small hands against the glass. I stood behind the front counter in a simple cream dress, my hair pinned back, my hands trembling around a tray of fresh bread. No one called it charity. Dominic had forbidden the word. On the new sign near the entrance, written in gold letters beneath Bella Vita's name, were 4 simple words. No child leaves hungry. I stared at it longer than I should have. Maybe because I still remembered Mr. Grayson's voice calling kindness unprofessional. Maybe because I remembered the $100 bill hitting the floor. Maybe because I remembered being so poor that giving away one meal had felt like cutting a piece out of my own body. Now the same restaurant that had humiliated me was feeding every child who walked through its doors. And Dominic Hayes, the most feared man in the city, stood in the back of the room like a shadow in a tailored black suit, watching it all happen without taking credit. That was his way. He did not know how to be gentle in public. He did not know how to stand in sunlight and let people thank him. But when the first little boy took a bowl of soup with both hands and whispered, "Is it really free?" I saw Dominic look away. Only for a second. Only long enough to hide the thing that moved across his face. Pain, maybe. Or memory. Lily sat at a corner table with 2 women from child protection and a bodyguard pretending badly to read a newspaper. She had a full plate in front of her, but she kept looking toward the door as if still expecting someone to take the food away. I walked over and placed a slice of chocolate cake beside her. Her eyes widened. "For me? For you?" I said. She smiled for the first time like a child who remembered she was allowed to. That smile nearly broke me. When I turned around, Dominic was watching me. Not the restaurant. Not his men. Me. The way he looked at me had changed since the night in the rain. It was still dangerous. Still controlled. But there was something beneath it now that made my breath catch every time. Not possession. Not pity. Devotion, sharpened into something almost terrifying. I walked toward him slowly, past tables filled with children, mothers, tired workers, and people who looked like they had not been welcomed anywhere beautiful in a long time. "You did this," I said. Dominic's eyes stayed on mine. "No," I tilted my head. "You did," he said. "I only bought the building." A laugh escaped me, soft and unsteady. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only I could hear. "There is a difference between power and purpose, Emily. I had power long before you walked into the rain. And purpose." His gaze dropped briefly to my hands, then back to my face. That started with a napkin. My chest tightened. For a moment, the noise of the restaurant faded. The clatter of spoons, the rain on the glass, Lily's quiet laugh from the corner, all of it blurred around the man standing in front of me. The man who had bought a restaurant chain because he saw me give away dinner. The man who had frightened criminals, lawyers, managers, landlords, and ghosts from my life. The man who still looked like he could destroy anything that touched me, but now waited for me to decide whether he was allowed to stand close. "You know this doesn't make you good," I whispered. His mouth curved slightly. "I know, but it makes you different." His eyes darkened. "For you," he said. 2 words. That was all. But they landed in me heavier than any confession. Before I could answer, the front door opened. The rain blew in first. Then a woman stepped inside wearing a dark hood, her face pale, her eyes fixed on Lily. Every guard in the restaurant moved at once. Dominic's hand found my waist, pulling me behind him with terrifying speed. Lily dropped her spoon. The woman lifted both hands, shaking, and whispered, "Please, I'm not here to hurt her." Dominic went completely still. I felt the change in him before I understood it. His voice turned cold enough to freeze the room. "Claire Monroe is dead." The woman pulled back her hood. Lily stood so fast her chair fell backward. And the woman, with tears running down her face, looked straight at the little girl and said, "No, baby." I had to make them believe I was. For one heartbeat, the whole restaurant forgot how to breathe. Claire Monroe stood just inside the doorway with rain dripping from the edge of her hood, her hands lifted, her face pale beneath the soft gold light of Bella Vita. She looked thinner than the photograph Dominic had shown me, older in the eyes, like survival had taken years from her and left only the parts too stubborn to die. Lily did not move. Her spoon lay on the floor beside the overturned chair. Chocolate cake sat untouched on the table. Around us, children went silent one by one, sensing the fear in the adults before they understood it. Dominic kept me behind him. His hand was firm at my waist, not hurting, not owning, anchoring. Every guard in the restaurant had a hand near his jacket, but none of them moved because Dominic had not given the order. His voice was colder than the rain outside. "Claire Monroe died 6 weeks ago." Claire's eyes flicked to him. That was the point. Lily made a sound so small it broke through every wall in the room. "Mom." Claire's face collapsed. She took one step forward. Dominic's men moved instantly. I stepped out from behind him before I realized I had done it. "Wait." Dominic's head turned sharply. "Emily." I did not look away from Claire. If she wanted to hurt Lily, she would not have walked through the front door with 20 of your men watching. Claire stared at me then, really stared, like she had been searching for my face in the dark for a long time. "You're her," she whispered. I froze. "What?" "The waitress." Her voice trembled. "The woman who fed my daughter." Dominic went still beside me. Claire reached into her coat slowly, carefully, and pulled out a folded scrap of paper. One of Dominic's men took it first, checked it, then handed it to him. Dominic opened it. I knew what it was before he showed me. A napkin. Not mine. Another one. Inside, written in shaky handwriting, was a message. "Find the woman who gave you food. She will choose you before power does." My throat closed. Lily began to cry. Claire looked at her daughter, every inch of her fighting the need to run across the room. "I had to leave you where someone still had a heart." They were watching every shelter, every relative, every safe house. But they did not watch kindness. Men like them never do. Dominic's jaw tightened. "Who are they?" Claire's eyes shifted to him, and fear passed through her face so quickly I almost missed it. "You still think this is about the files?" "It is." "No," she said. "The files were only insurance." Dominic stepped forward. "Against whom?" Claire swallowed. The restaurant seemed to shrink around us. Against the windows, rain slid down in silver lines. Lily's quiet crying filled the space between every table. Children clung to their bowls. Mothers pulled them closer. The new Bella Vita sign glowed above the door like a promise someone was trying to break. Claire looked at me instead of Dominic. That scared me more than anything. "I did not come back because it was safe," she said. "I came back because feeding those children today told them exactly where Lily was." My blood turned cold. Dominic's hand flexed once at his side. "What do you mean?" I asked. Claire's eyes filled with tears. "The food program. The new sign. The reopening. It was beautiful, Emily. But it was also a signal." Dominic turned to one of his men. "Lock the doors." The guards moved. Too late. A phone started ringing from the front counter. Not mine. Not Dominic's. The restaurant landline. Everyone stared at it. The sound cut through the room again and again. Too bright, too ordinary, too wrong. Dominic walked toward it, but I got there first. He caught my wrist. No, I looked up at him. They called here because they want you angry. Let me hear them. For the first time, he hesitated. Then he released me. I lifted the receiver. At first, there was only static. Then a man's voice, smooth and amused, whispered into my ear. Tell Dominic Hayes that buying one restaurant chain was impressive. My fingers tightened around the phone. The voice smiled through the line. But let's see if he can buy back every child inside it. Across the room, Lily screamed. Because outside the window, one of the black SUVs that had been guarding the restaurant was no longer filled with Dominic's men. It was filled with strangers. Dominic did not panic. That was the first thing I noticed. While every mother in the restaurant pulled children against her chest, while Lily screamed for Claire, while the phone line went dead in my hand, Dominic Hayes became colder than anything I had ever seen. Not angry, not loud, cold. The kind of cold that made men hesitate before they made their last mistake. Lights down, he said. The restaurant went dark at once. Only the gray rain light remained, sliding through the windows in broken silver lines. Children whimpered beneath tables. Chairs scraped softly across the floor. Somewhere near the kitchen, a bowl shattered, and the sound made every frightened breath in the room freeze. Dominic's men moved like shadows. One guard locked the front door. Another pulled the curtains halfway closed. Two more guided families toward the back hallway without speaking. Not chaos, not confusion. A plan that had been built long before anyone needed it. I realized then that Dominic Hayes did not enter any place without knowing how to escape it. His hand found my arm. Stay behind me. No, his head turned slowly. Even in the dark, I felt the weight of his stare. Emily, there are children here, I whispered. You don't know which ones are too scared to move. I do. For 1 second, I thought he would drag me behind him anyway. Then Claire spoke from across the room, her voice shaking. They won't come in shooting. They need Lily alive. Dominic's eyes cut to her. Why? Claire looked at Lily, and guilt tore across her face. Because she remembers the second code. The words landed like a match dropped into gasoline. Dominic went still. I looked at Lily, who was trembling beside the overturned chair, her face wet with tears. What's second code? Claire's voice broke. I taught her a song. I thought if they ever caught me, she would still have the key. I never thought they would realize it. Outside, the black SUV's doors opened. 4 men stepped into the rain. Not Dominic's men. They wore dark coats, their faces hidden beneath caps, their movements too calm to be random. One of them carried a phone. He lifted it toward the restaurant window, and the landline rang again. No one touched it. Dominic looked at one of his guards. Back exit. Blocked. Kitchen tunnel. Clear for now. For now, Claire whispered. Means they left it open. Dominic's jaw tightened. The trap was not the front door. It was the escape. My heart hammered so hard I could barely hear the rain. Then Lily's small hand slipped into mine. She was shaking. I'm sorry, she whispered. I crouched in front of her, even though Dominic hissed my name under his breath. You have nothing to be sorry for. They want the song. They don't get to take anything from you. Her fingers tightened around mine. Mom said the lady who fed me would choose me. The words hit me so hard I almost closed my eyes. Across the room, Claire covered her mouth, crying silently. Dominic looked at me, and for the first time, I saw fear break through his control. Not fear for himself. Never that. Fear because he knew exactly what I was about to do. No, he said. I stood slowly. Emily, he warned. If they want Lily, they need to believe she's moving through the tunnel. His face darkened. Absolutely not. I know the back halls. I know the old catering route. I know where the staff lockers connect to the laundry chute. You are not bait. I'm not bait, I said, though my voice trembled. I'm the waitress no one ever noticed. That silenced him, because we both knew it was true. For years, I had moved through rooms full of powerful people without being seen. I had carried their plates, heard their secrets, watched their cruelty, learned which doors locked and which ones stuck in the rain. They had trained me to be invisible. Now invisibility was the only weapon I had. Dominic stepped close enough that the world narrowed to him. If you walk away from me right now, he said quietly, I will burn every street between here and wherever they take you. I looked up at him. Then make sure they don't take me. Something in his eyes fractured. Not weakness. Trust. Terrifying, unwilling trust. He removed his black coat and placed it around my shoulders. It swallowed me in warmth, rain, and the faint scent of him. Then he bent close to my ear. 3 minutes, he whispered. You give me 3 minutes, and then you run toward me. Not away, toward me. I nodded. Claire took Lily into her arms for the first time, both of them crying so quietly it hurt worse than screaming. I slipped through the service door with Dominic's coat around me and Lily's blue charm hidden in my fist. Behind me, Bella Vita stayed dark. Ahead, the kitchen tunnel waited open, wet, silent, and far too empty. I made it halfway down the corridor before a man's voice came from the shadows. Smart girl. I stopped breathing. The man stepped into the dim emergency light, smiling as if he had been expecting me all along. And behind him, held between two strangers, was Mr. Grayson. Mr. Grayson looked smaller in the tunnel than he ever had inside Bella Vita. Without his polished suit, without his gold name badge, without a room full of staff too tired and afraid to answer back, he was just a pale man in a wrinkled shirt, held upright by two strangers who clearly did not respect him any more than they respected me. But his eyes still found mine with the same old hatred. You, he said, as if my existence had personally ruined him. I tightened my fingers around Lily's blue charm. Dominic's coat hung heavy over my shoulders, warm with the scent of rain and danger. 3 minutes, he had said. I wondered how much time had already passed. The man beside Grayson smiled. He was older, silver-haired, clean-shaven, dressed too well for a service tunnel beneath a restaurant. His shoes were spotless despite the wet floor. That frightened me more than a weapon would have. Men like him did not get their hands dirty. They convinced other people to do it. Emily Parker, he said softly. The waitress who turned Dominic Hayes into a philanthropist. I said nothing. His smile widened. You were supposed to be nobody. I said. That is why you all keep underestimating me. Something flickered in his eyes. Behind him, Grayson laughed bitterly. You think you are special because Hayes bought you a restaurant? No, I said, looking straight at him. I think you are still angry because he bought the place where you felt powerful. His face twisted. The silver-haired man lifted one hand, silencing him without even looking. Where is the child? My heart thudded once. I forced my eyes not to move. Not toward the locked service door behind me. Not toward the narrow vent above the laundry chute where Dominic's men might already be listening. Not toward anything that would tell them Lily was still inside Bella Vita, in her mother's arms. You called for me, I said. Now you have me. We did not ask for a martyr. I'm not one. No. He stepped closer. Then why are you wearing his coat and holding her charm? I looked down at the blue charm in my fist. Then I did the only thing I could think of. I smiled. Not because I was brave. Because I had spent years serving men who believed a smile meant surrender. It is funny, I said quietly. You all thought Claire hid the code in a song. The man stopped. Grayson's eyes sharpened. I lifted the charm slightly. But Claire knew Lily was a child. Children forget songs when they are scared. They cry. They freeze. They mix up words. His calm expression began to crack. I took one small step back. So she gave the real key to someone adults would never search. The tunnel went silent except for dripping water. Who? He asked. I swallowed. Then I looked at Grayson. His face changed before he understood why. You kept employee files, I said. Old staff routes. Catering codes. Private event invoices. You were so proud of knowing every corner of Bella Vita because it made you feel important. Grayson shook his head. What are you talking about? The second code was in your system, I whispered. And you handed it to Dominic the moment you tried to steal my employee folder. The silver-haired man turned slowly toward him. Grayson went white. No, he said. No, I didn't know. A phone buzzed in the man's hand. He looked at the screen. For the first time, real fear crossed his face. The message must have been simple, because all he did was whisper, Hayes. Then the lights came on. All of them. Bright white flooded the tunnel from both ends. Dominic stood behind the silver-haired man with 6 of his men, his black shirt sleeves rolled, his face empty in the way storms looked empty before they tore roofs from houses. His eyes found me first. Only me. I had never understood what relief could do to a dangerous man until I saw it turn Dominic's fear into something colder than rage. You got your 3 minutes, I said, my voice shaking. Dominic walked toward me, slow and controlled, while his men surrounded the others. I gave you 2, he said. Then he took his coat from my shoulders, wrapped it tighter around me, and looked over my head at the men who had used a restaurant full of children as bait. His voice was quiet enough to make the whole tunnel listen. Now I take the rest of the night. The silver-haired man tried to speak. Dominic did not let him. Not with violence. With proof. Phones lit up. Screens showed bank transfers, coded invoices, fake charities, child transport routes, names of judges, police captains, businessmen, and every powerful person who had hidden behind Bellavita's luxury rooms. Claire's files had not just survived. They had gone live. Above us, through the ceiling, I heard sirens approaching. Not Dominic's men. Real sirens. Federal sirens. Grayson sank to the floor as if his bones had disappeared. The silver-haired man stared at me with pure hatred. Dominic stepped between us before the look could touch me for another second. When he turned back, his hand rose to my cheek, stopping just short of contact. Still asking. Always asking now. I leaned into his palm. His breath caught. And in that wet service tunnel beneath the restaurant where everything had begun with hunger, I realized something terrifying and beautiful. Dominic Hayes had not made me powerful. He had only been the first dangerous man to notice that I already was.